Welcome back to another special edition of DBB Live, where we're going to recap the Detroit Pistons 113-101 loss to the Houston Rockets in their second game of the NBA Summer League. So today's game wasn't as fun as yesterday's. Especially the first half, and we're going to get to individual players in a minute, but I just wanted to do a quick sort of recap of the game and what it was like being in the stands. It was often when you're in the stands. This is probably my 8th, 9th, or 10th NBA game, something like that I've been to. And sometimes when you're in the stands, you can get lost in the game on the court itself, and you sometimes aren't very aware of the score and the box score. But in this game, in the first half, the Rockets were quite dominant. Jabari Smith Jr. had just a pretty amazing game from a shot-making perspective. He finished with 38 on the night, and he was the driving force in those first three quarters. He was hitting everything, pull-up shots. It looked like the Jabari Smith coming out of Auburn a year ago that people had touted as a number one overall pick. And yeah, he really carved up Detroit. And he saw in the third quarter, I believe, he was letting the Pistons know about it. He was talking to the bench or talking to the Pistons players on the sideline. And I mean, as much as I hate to say it, rightfully so, when you're playing like that, you can say what you want. So he was the match winner for the Rockets. Him and Tari Eason, who came along after probably a bit of a quiet first quarter. Tari Eason for the last three quarters of the game was just a physical monster. And then Cam Whitmore started this one really well, faded a bit in the second half, but he had 21 points as well. So on the Pistons end, I want to start by just talking about that two big lineup, because I've seen a little bit on Twitter and just in Pistons general discussion that it's a very divisive thing. People either think Wiseman and Durant should start together, and there's a lot of potential there, and then some people just flat out don't think the two big lineup works at all. I'm not here to tell you what's right and what's wrong. I'm just here to share my thoughts. And in my opinion, I think where people get a little bit confused is you look at the box score, and Jalen Duren and James Wiseman have had two really good games from a box score point of view. Tonight, Wiseman 17-10 on 7 of 17 shooting. JD 23-10 on 10 of 14, and I believe they had a couple of blocks each, or at least 2 or 3 between them. So when you look at the box score, I get how you can think those two are playing really well, and they're playing really well when they're sharing the floor. But in my opinion, just watching it, I have a lot of concerns defensively. And I mean, offensively, I don't really. It's not even. This isn't an indictment against Wiseman or Durant. I think they're both very talented players. I think Durant's the starting big, in my opinion, and Wiseman's big off the bench. But I just don't think you can have two centers playing power forward and center. It just, on the defensive end, we saw Jabari Smith. He was dicing up James Wiseman James Wiseman's trying to guard him at the point of attack at the top of the 3-point line, and James he's a center. He's 7'1". Yes, he's pretty athletically gifted, but that's in my opinion, I don't see that as an area to really. For James Wiseman, I don't think in the regular season you want him at the point of attack. You want him in drop coverage around the rim as much as possible, where he doesn't have to compute everything around him as much. If he's back at the basket, he's just got to worry about what's ahead of him, not so much who's behind him, beside him, how he's got to move his feet. Is he got to get into stance or get back? There's just a lot of decisions he has to make at the point of attack, which I just don't think a 7'1" big man. There's not many players who can do that. There's Evan Mobley, Anthony Davis maybe in his peak, and who knows with Victor Wembanyama. But it's not common. So I think the two big lineup, when you look at it in the vacuum with their box scores, I can see how people think that's a good thing. In my opinion, I don't think we really see it in the regular season. I think we do see two big lineups, but I don't think it's Durant and Wiseman. I think it'll be Isaiah Stewart playing at the power forward alongside either one of those two. And I'm okay with that. I know some people have a different opinion, but I'm okay with seeing that because I don't believe in Isaiah Stewart as a shooter. I believe in him as a versatile defender. But in terms of James Wiseman, Jalen Duren, I don't think they can bring enough defensively. And even still, when you look at the rebounding and points in the paint numbers, the Pistons ended up winning that. But I checked that halfway through the third quarter, or at the end of the third quarter, as I was taking my game notes, and the Pistons were down in the rebounding department. They were down the points in the paint, and Detroit were down by 20 points for a lot of this game tonight. So when you're playing two bigs, those are the two areas, points in the paint and rebounding, you should be looking to dominate, particularly if the other team's not playing two bigs, which, I mean, Tari Eason, in my opinion, is just a massive wing. He's an insane athlete. I don't consider him a true big. So, I mean, I like what I've seen from them individually. As a two big lineup, I don't think that's something we'll see in the regular season. I'm happy. I don't mind seeing it at the Summer League because that's what this time of the year is for. Figure it out, see if they can do stuff together. I know Wiseman and Durant have been working together this offseason, so I'm sure they've worked on. I mean, Wise had a really nice high-low pass to JD in the first quarter. Great. You love to see that. You love to see Wiseman opening up things with his passing because he's such a tall guy. He should be able to like thread passes to teammates, cutting teammates. So, but I think on the whole, the two big lineup is just an experiment with Jalen Duren and James Wiseman. So I'll get into individual players now, and I may as well just quickly wrap up Jalen Duren. It was a bit of a quiet 23 and 10. He had some really nice highlight dunks, a couple of lobs off pick and rolls with Jaden Ivey. Personally, I think it's probably because they were down by 20 points for a lot of the game. I just didn't feel JD as much as I did last game. He had 4 offensive rebounds, but 3 of those are in the first quarter when the game was a bit closer. So that's normally where he asserts himself physically. He did have the one block shot, but sometimes, especially when he's playing with James Wiseman, he's out guarding the corner. He's trying to roam. He's still trying to figure out where to be on defense at times, which is fine. He's 19. But solid stat line, solid game. I mean, if he had to put up 30 and 20, I wouldn't probably feel any different to if he had to put up 15 and 8. It was just Jalen Duren. I'm just happy to see him on the court, getting reps with his new teammates. And then James Wiseman started this game really strong, 17 and 10. The second half, though, we saw post-up Wise come back. And I said in my post-game notes on Twitter that I think I said he needs to replace those post-ups with screens. I want to clarify that a little bit. I don't mind the occasional post-up, but the issue with Wise when he posts up is he does have a pretty efficient little lefty hook, not in post-up situations. Though, if you look at the synergy numbers, which I'll get onto Twitter one day soon, he's got a really good lefty hook, but it's normally when he's rolling to the rim or he's getting it in the dunker spot, not so much when he goes back to the basket dribbling. So I can see maybe, though, if you want to run a post up here and there, if he's got a smaller guy on him, go for it. But when he's posting up consecutive possessions in a row, it just sort of mucks up the offense because there's already enough non-shooters on the court with Ausar Thompson, with Jalen Duren on the court. And then if Jaden Ivey's if Marcus Sasser's got the ball in hand, say, Jaden Ivey's a pretty good catch and shoot shooter, but, there's just not enough shooting there to really have Wiseman posting up. He needs to be setting screens to get the defense moving. And it was just when he was posting up, things got stagnant. And that's also on the coaching staff to implore Wise, you post up last possession. Let's get a pick and roll this possession, as well as Jaden Ivey and Marcus Sasser and whoever's handling the ball to call Wise up to set the screen. It's not all on Wise himself. He's probably played his whole life posting up because he's such a big, powerful athlete. It's sort of ingrained. It's a habit of his. So I'm not putting this all on him, but he just needs to be more aware of when to post up and when not to. So that's my take on Wiseman. I think on the whole, through 2 games, he's still played well. He's exceeded probably the pass mark, in my opinion. Excited to see if he plays the next 2 games. But yeah, bit of a down second half. His 3 previous halves have been really, really good. I like what I've seen from him. So overall, still really good from Wise. Plenty to work on, though. And then I want to get to Ausar Thompson, the man we've all been waiting to talk about. I think what I was most impressed about with Ausar tonight was the resilience he showed in that second half. He had a really sketchy second quarter there, just mainly with his jumper. He was still contributing in transition, rebounding, steals, blocks. He finished with 12 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks on 6 of 13 shooting. So he's still doing everything. But in that second quarter, he was 2 of 7 and he had some really rough misses there. The process to getting to those pull-ups was good, just with his handle, and it looked nice, but they were a bit short. I think one even might have airballed. So to see him come back from that, though, because you could feel it in the crowd tonight. There's a lot of Pistons fans there. When he was having those bad misses, there was tense. People felt like, ooh. And you can only imagine what that does to Ausar. Even if you're mentally strong, like if you're missing that bad, it sort of takes a little bit of shot at your confidence. So to see him come back in the second half and just be dynamic in transition, he was a part of all the Pistons. It felt like when he was on the court, he was a part of all the Pistons. Successful transition play, continued to play stout defense. I don't know if it'll be counted as a block or a steal, but he basically stripped Jabari Smith midair on a drive and then just blasted down the court. So I thought excellent second half from Ausar, good game overall, and he just built upon a solid performance last night. And I really hope we get to see 4 games of Ausar. I feel like he'll definitely play the next game. And if Ivey and Durant sit out the next game, I think we will see more on ball for Ausar. I just want to caution fans, the on-ball part of his game is the area I was sort of concerned most about with just looking at him pre-draft. Just on-ball in the half court, that is. So I just want to temper fans' expectations. Don't expect him to be creating in the pick and roll every possession and, not turning it over or not having, a rough miss here and there on a pull-up, because it's just he needs to work on that part of his game, and he works really hard. I'm sure it's going to come, but just temper your expectations with him on ball in the half court, because that, in my opinion, is a growth area for him, and he will get there. But in the first half, my mentors were full of people calling him a bust, and then we saw him in the second half. I don't think there was a lot said after that third and fourth quarter. So great game from Ausar. And then we'll get to the Pistons starting point guard on the night, Jaden Ivey, who had a really good bounce back game. He was the guy I was watching in the first quarter in particular, just to see his approach on the night after sort of he shot 5 of 16 last game, but it wasn't so much the shooting percentages. Some of his shot selection was a bit questionable, but it was more so just it felt like he had the blinders on in that first game and sort of missed some open passes. Whereas tonight he was much more aware of his surroundings, his teammates. He had 10 assists, so the numbers back it up. He was passing the ball, looked really good in transition, found Ausar for a couple of lobs, found Jalen Duran for multiple lobs. And it was really cool to see him on a fast break. He could have gone up for the dunk himself, but he dropped it off for Ausar to get a dunk. And that was in the second quarter when Ausar was struggling. So for JI to have that awareness to see his teammates he's just missed 3 shots and he's probably feeling a bit down, to dump off the ball, get his confidence back up in Thompson. That was really cool. So finished tonight 9 of 15, 2 of 6 from 3. And yeah, he got to the rim. His defense was solid. He had a really nice steal in the last quarter when it was around 10 points, where he just clean stripped the Houston guard around the half court. And I think ultimately there was a turnover off that. But just seeing him still competing as a second-year guy who probably doesn't have to be here, to see him still competing when his team's down 10 in the last minute of a summer league game, I think that's pretty cool. And that shows you a lot about his mindset and approach. So solid game from Ivey. I wouldn't have been worried if he had another poor game, but seeing him have a game like he did tonight, where you could tell he's a NBA starting guard with plenty of potential, that's what you want to see. So he did everything you would like to see, and solid game. I think that might be the last we see of Ivey. But yeah, solid summer league for him. I wouldn't be worried if he had 2 poor games. I wouldn't be saying he's going to be an all-star if he had 2 30-point games. He was solid. And the next guy I want to get to was Marcus Sasser. He was really quiet tonight. Played 25 minutes, finished with 3 points, couple of assists, couple of steals, 1 of 6 from the field. I'm never going to be worried about his shooting. So the fact he shot 1 of 4 from 3 doesn't concern me at all. When you just look at him shoot the ball, there's not much to be concerned about. And then you look at the percentages that he shot last season at college. This guy's going to be able to hit, knock down, catch, and shoot threes in his rookie season, no doubt about it. So unless he has 3 seasons shooting sub 30%, I'll never be worried about the jumper. I think he's sort of struggling to find his role offensively, especially because the Pistons are running a lot through Ivy, and then Wiseman and Duran are doing a little bit off the bounce, or they're just heavily involved in the offense. Those 3 guys, they've got the ball in their hands, they're taking the most shots. And then tonight, Ausar was a bit more assertive. So that's more reps taken away from Sasa. So I think with Ivy presumably and Duran out for the next game and the rest of Summer League, I think Sasa finds more opportunities on ball, and I think he will have definitely a game where he scores close to 20 points or more, hits multiple threes, and yeah, there's nothing to be worried about with him. I don't think he's struggling because he's too small or I have no concerns. He had a couple of nice pull-ups in the mid-range, and they just didn't go down, but they look really good. I mean, his handle, the way he transitions from dribbling the ball into his dribble pull-up is so smooth and looks so refined that I'm not going to really be concerned about that, especially at Summer League. So plenty to improve upon, but nothing to be worried about for Marcus Sasa. And the last guy I want to give a shout out to just quickly is Buddy Boeheim. I get fans were a bit frustrated with his position on the roster last season. That's fine. That's fair. But in these 2 games, in extremely limited action, he shot the ball really well. He shot 3 or 4 from 3 tonight. He had a no-dip 3 from sort of top of the key, which is cool to see. So shout out to Buddy. Solid game. He's obviously not on the Pistons roster, but I just wanted to shout him out because he's done exactly what he needs to do. And good for him. So the Pistons now, the next game they play, they have 2 more games. One on Wednesday against the Raptors at 6 p.m. and then on Friday against presumably the Victor Wembanyama-less Spurs. That's at 8:30. So this was my last game being in person I fly out from Vegas on the 12th, just before the Raptors game. So I will do a post-game Raptors video potentially. If not, I'll definitely do a Spurs one once I'm more accustomed to my new time zone. And we will go from there. In the meantime, shout out to Sean Court. He's the man who makes this all happen, allows me to have this show. He's the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys. So shout out to Sean. And until then, we'll see you most likely Friday. Go Pistons. Peace.